Welcome to Voodoo Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of Saints Row the Third Remastered. Honestly, the Remastered Edition is just a great excuse for me to replay the Saints Row games, especially any of them, really, any of them. That being said, I'm not going to go into the most extreme detail because I have already done a Saints Row the Third review. This is mostly just a review of the differences between that and the Remastered Edition. That being said, I played it on the Xbox One, it's also available on the PS4, and pretty much everything else as far as I'm aware. So briefly, the story goes, you play as the leader of the Saints, and basically the first mission goes wrong, you find yourself at odds with another gang in their city, and you're gonna take over. Of course, some other shit happens along the way because it's a Saints Row game, and a lot of it happens in a really wacky manner. As for the audio is still really good. It's not my favorite of the Saints Row games for the soundtrack, and quite frankly, I think most of the weapons sound good. I will say the minigun was wildly unsatisfying. But the voiceover work and all of that hasn't changed, neither has the music. It's actually pretty impressive that the soundtrack has been able to remain the same. But overall, I enjoy the music, I enjoy the game, I enjoy the voiceover work, I like the sound effects, I think they work well with the game. As for the mechanics and whatnot, it's a third-person open-world game, and it's kind of cool that you take over the different sectors by doing different side missions and, you know, buying buildings, and basically doing things you would do to kind of take over different areas of the city, and I think that's a pretty cool way of going about it. There are a ton of RPG elements in Saints Row the Third. You can basically level up a lot of your abilities. You do that through gaining respect and getting cash. The respect unlocks it, and then the cash is how you pay for it, essentially. You can also upgrade your guns, you get a bunch of different, new characters who will run around with you and help you. A lot of the basic stuff that is very common to the Saints Row games. But I will point out here, I ran into some issues in the gameplay, specifically glitches that were not present in the original game. There were numerous times, just way too many times for it to be acceptable, that the game would glitch during a mission and the objective would be told to me by whichever character was telling it to me, but it wouldn't trigger. I would have to actually close out the entire game, go back in, and start from scratch, which got really frustrating having to do it, I don't know, at least 7 or 8 times. And it happened to me in one of the final missions where I'd already completed like 3 or 4 objectives up to that point, and that was the most frustrating time that it happened. There were also a bunch of other weird glitches, one I'm going to get into now since I'm going to go into the controls. Overall, the controls are good. They work the same. I don't have any complaints with them. If you want more detail into this, you can check out my original review. But I will say that the camera often did some weird shit this time around. Specifically, I would be aiming up to the right or to the left or up, down, whatever, and it would just snap back to center. Which that's obviously not helpful when I'm shooting at enemies who are chasing me or when I'm flying, especially when I'm flying. It was a huge pain in the ass. I don't know why that was happening. It never happened to me when I was playing the original Saints Row the Third. And then let's just get into the biggest difference in this game, and that is the graphics. Graphically speaking, Saints Row has always been very cartoony and bright. I mean, not overly cartoony, but while the characters look like humans, they look like cartoony humans. And that does continue in this game, but with more detail. You can see the textures of their skin, you can see the texture of their clothing. Everything in the world just has so much more detail. And at first it was a little weird to me because it stripped away that cartoony element, but you get used to it and it still feels very cartoony. It's still very bright and colorful for the most part. One major exception to that is at night. The game gets dark as shit, like in a way that it never was in the original version of the game. I actually had to quit out and up my brightness because the one they recommended was just way too fucking dark and it got kind of obnoxious. It was hard to see enemies at night. Which I know is probably more realistic, but still, it's a video game. I don't need 100% realism. That being said, overall, I think graphically it's fantastic, but it feels kind of wasted. It's not like Saints Row the Third had aged that terribly. I can think of 2 other Saints Row games that could have really used this remastered, treatment. So to wrap this up, if you want more detail into all of this, I will include a link to my Saints Row the Third review. What this was just kind of going over some of the differences and honestly, mostly the problems that I ran into while playing this remastered edition. It was also just a great excuse to replay Saints Row the Third. Unfortunately, with the issues that are there at the moment, I've gotta say, kind of hard to recommend the remastered edition. Especially when the regular Saints Row the Third edition still exists, you can still get the DLC, but, I mean, if you can't get those, like on the PS4, then yeah, this is there. But I wouldn't pay full price for it at the moment, or I would at least wait a little while until they fix some of these glitches because they suck and they kind of spoil parts of the game for you. They just make it annoying when you're repeating a mission because the game glitched. That being said, I will recommend it, but either on sale or just wait a while till the price drops a little bit, something like that. Okay, so in the comments down below, why don't you tell me your opinion on why is it that when they remaster a game, it comes with new glitches? As always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share, subscribe. Have a good one. As for the mechanics, it's a third world open...